Greetings of peace, love, and light. I am Godis, Nanu, and I am here in a replica of the Garden of Eden. I chose to be here instead of the Light Body Sanctuary because the topic today is on the spirit of legalism. What is the spirit of legalism? Now, this is a continuation of our series on the pillars of the Light Body Sanctuary. So I would advise to go back and watch all of the videos in that series, especially if you have just joined the Light Body Sanctuary. You want to watch all of those videos. Now, what does the spirit of legalism have to do with the Garden of Eden? The spirit of legalism is one of the oldest destructive entities on the planet Earth. One of the oldest, if not the oldest. Okay? When did this spirit first take root and hold in the lives of human beings was in the Garden of Eden. When Eve chose death over life. When she chose to eat from the tree of death. Some people call it the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but truly it was the tree of death, okay? And they could have ate from the tree of life, but they chose the tree of death, okay? And that's the cause of a lot of our issues now. But if you follow the message that God has given me, then you understand and have faith for a change, for a return to our original state, a return to our Creator, and to wholeness and divinity, and the ability to walk in that experience, to walk in the Spirit, to walk in oneness with God or your Creator. So I'm going to try to stay on topic and make this video as brief as possible. So bear with me. If you have any questions, please drop your questions in the comments, okay? Or you can ask me directly as well. Or if you need guidance in any kind of way, you know you're going to need a 30-minute, hour-long session, you can always book a session through my website, godisnanu.com. All right, let's get back on topic. The spirit of legalism, which is very prevalent today in a lot of religions. Within so many religions, matter of fact, it's the spirit of legalism that keeps so many people oppressed, even just within their government. So when I start to talk about the spirit of legalism, we don't want to go to the opposite end of being lawless, right? Because it is important to have rules and to have laws that govern us, that govern people, okay? But once you get to a certain point in your relationship with the Creator, your relationship with God, your moral compass should supersede these laws. So this is where people get stuck. People get stuck operating in the spirit of legalism, which comes from not having an intimate relationship with your Creator, with not having a heart that has been molded, has been in tune with your Creator. That's why alignment is important, right? So we want to align ourselves. We definitely want to have spiritual discipline and align ourselves with the Creator, prepare our temples and our minds for connection with our creator. But once you start to connect with your creator, you will learn that those same avenues have limitations. You have to grow beyond that. And that doesn't mean to operate in lawlessness, okay? That doesn't mean you become immoral, okay? Because you can't be one with God and be immoral and be lawless. So that's not what I'm saying. And people may want to misconstrue that, especially if they're already functioning in the spirit of legalism, because that's the way that that spirit works in their lives, to keep them bound, to keep them constricted, and to keep them oppressed. Okay. And a lot of people use the spirit of legalism, the spirit of control, the spirit of manipulation, the spirit of witchcraft, the spirit of religiosity to control others. Okay. It places them in a position of power over others because others will be looking to them to share law. Which way do I move? This way? Do I move that way? And you should not be looking to another person. You should be looking inward. You should be listening and tuning in to the voice of your creator, okay? To the voice of God. So walk with me on this path. We need to walk on water, all right? We need to walk on water. The path that I'm walking is the path of walking on water with God. And some people may not be ready for that, and that's fine, okay? But I am someone who walks in a place of liberation and freedom and connection with my creator. Okay, my heart is molded, my mind is shaped, my spirit is strengthened by my master. And you can only have one master, and my master is the absolute, perfect, and holy creator of all that is, my divine self. Not that I am the absolute God of myself, but my divine self, because I know where I was birthed from. I know who sent me here, and I know where I'm returning to, the Alpha and the Omega, okay? And you have to know that without a shadow of a doubt. And there's no shortcuts to being able to experience that. It can only come through genuine connection. You have to plug in. You have to deplug from the matrix. You have to be delivered from all of these other entities that you are serving. And yes, people can look like they're serving God and be serving other entities, even in ignorance. Okay, so we all have a message to bring. This is my message so that you can become delivered from the spirit of legalism. Now, let's talk about what is the spirit of legalism. So we can go all the way back to the Garden of Eden, the knowledge of good and evil that opened us up to serving the spirit of legalism. Okay, we can start there. The moment you feel like you know and you are the absolute voice on what is right and what is wrong, you will operate in the spirit of legalism. Am I talking about trusting your moral compass? No, that's not what I'm talking about. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay? You should trust your moral compass. All right? You should trust your moral compass and operate in that. But the moment that you are not following after the Spirit of God, you are not operating out of hearing the voice of God, and you begin to say, it's this or that this is the law, and it didn't come from God, that's operating the spirit of legalism. Yes, you are supposed to be fully dependent on your creator. You are like a plant. Your roots should be rooted deep in the soil of your creator. Your mind should be rooted deep, nested, ah, nested in the bosom of your creator. Yes. The moment you begin operating outside of that, you unplug from your source of life and you start to inherit death. And I mean, it's very simple, really. It's very simple. It doesn't matter if it seems right, doesn't matter. So, this is really a message for those who might be a little bit more mature in their growth. Because what happens is you start to, as you become spiritually disciplined, you start to set maybe routines, maybe rules um, for yourself, or maybe even God gave you a set of rules that you asked for, and you begin to abide by those rules. But when the Spirit said to do something different, you can't. And you get caught up in, okay, I'm following these rules now, and that's enough. And you're not connecting with your Creator, you're not listening to the Creator's voice. And you get caught up in following these set rules and thinking that everybody has to follow these set rules in order to be be divine or be holy, and it's just not true. Okay, the creator may give you a set of rules and may give somebody else a different set of rules based on what's in their heart and what their mission is to accomplish on the planet. And you can't judge other people by that because you don't know what their walk is. You don't know what God has spoken to them. And a lot of people are not going to be able to get with this because they think there has to be a set standard for everyone. And sure, there is a set standard that's obvious, an obvious moral code. However, once you become more adept in your walk with the Creator, it's not that simple. It's not that simple. Okay? Let's say, okay, like for those people, yeah, let's go to the law of Moses, right? Let's stick to the Bible because that's most basic. Majority of people on the earth are Christians still. So let's go to the Bible, right? Even the Jews can follow along with this. Um, you have the law of Moses, right? Let's talk about that. Is that something God freely gave? Did God freely give a covenant? No. The people begged for that. They begged for laws. Why? Because they were spiritually lazy. I mean, that really, truly, that comes from a place of spiritual laziness. And I think I said in my other video when we were talking about how to respond to spiritual attack, one of the things I address is spiritual laziness. Don't let the enemy get you slipping. So, people use laws as a means to govern themselves and also to govern people, right? But truly, that is being spiritually lazy because then you don't have to rely on God to tell you right and wrong. You're just following that law, and your heart can still be wrong. Your intention can still be wrong. This is where the Pharisees and the Sadducees came in and why this became an issue during the time of Yeshua, when Yeshua was on the earth, and coming against the spirit of legalism and the spirit of religiosity. Mm. Because people had made law God, has replaced God with the law and with what they call the letter. And so you don't want to get caught up doing that. Replacing God with the law, replacing God with the letter, replacing God with scripture, whatever your spiritual text is that God has used to speak to you to, because it's not God. Okay, it's a tool, but that is not God. You still have to do the work to connect with God. You still have to do the work to be filled with God's spirit, talk to God, build a relationship with God, because God, they say God remains the same, but God is moving. God is alive. God is not dead. Things that are stiff, still, and rigid are rooted in death. Okay? God is not a coffin. Moving, living water, that's God. Okay? Trees growing up out the ground, plants growing out the ground, that's God. The insects, butterflies, bees flying around, that's God. Okay? God does not exist in rigidity. Okay? Structure, yes. Structure is important. But structure is a foundation, it's a frame. It is not the end all be all. You need structure because you need to know where to come back to, where to be anchored, so that you're not tossed to and fro with every wind of doctrine, right? So that you don't get caught up, you don't get lost and confused. Something may sound like God and not be God, and you need to know where to come back to. All right? Because sometimes we may get lost in the crowd. We may be walking with God hand in hand, and you know what I'm saying? We may let go for a second and get lost. And so you need proper foundation. You need a frame. You need pillars. You need a foundation. You need structure so that you can come back to that and reestablish the connection if you've gotten lost. But God is beyond that. You have to understand that and not to get caught up in the spirit of legalism, because that will allow you to be controlled by other entities and other spirits. You have to walk with God. You have to know God without a shadow of a doubt. And if you're atheist and listening to this, you may think, well, God ain't real. Okay. I mean, hey, I don't understand that. You know what I'm saying? I can't relate to that. God has always spoken to me. So I can't relate to that. You might think, maybe you think I'm insane, and that's fine too. I don't really care. You know, because once you know God, you don't want to be without God. So, hey, power to you, because that's a miserable existence. In my opinion. All right. I think I am going to stop right there. Of course, it's probably going to be a part 2, but this is already a 20-minute long video, and I'm trying to keep these videos at 10 minutes. All right, so thank you for listening. If you have any questions or comments, please do not hesitate. I am all for the exchange and human interaction. All right, so do not hesitate to voice your thoughts, your opinions, and how this resonates with you. Peace, love, and light. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, set your notifications, hit that bell, okay, so you get notifications whenever I upload a new video. Or you can join us in the Light Body Sanctuary That way you won't get left behind when we start to move forward with other things that don't exist on these social platforms.